ever gonna stop? I've forgotten what the sun looks like. We should go on vacation. Somewhere warm. Somewhere sunny. Dragon Shores, yeah! I haven't been there since we kicked Gnasty Gnorcs' butt. How about it, Sparks? You up for a vacation at the beach? Last one there's a Gnorc!
Spyro! Spyro is a scrappy all-rounder whose balanced yet versatile kit allows him to keep up with any foe, all while his mixture of coverage and movement options allows him to slip in and out of combat and catch his opponents when they least expect it. While he might be small, he more than makes up for it with his tenacity, as Spyro's great frame data, combo options, and variety of ways to disrupt his opponent makes him difficult to lock down and fairly rewarding once he gets in. Spyro's small stature can also be quite rewarding, as it can allow him to slip past attacks and potentially escape combos. But being small does come with its issues, and this is most clear with Spyro's biggest weakness, his range. Outside of a couple of attacks, Spyro will need to get fairly close for his attacks to be effective, and while he might have options that allow him to get in, this, mixed with an average weight value, might make it hard to gain ground against characters with strong spacing tools, especially if they're disjointed. As a Spyro player, it's your job to make the most of your great mobility in order to move in and get some momentum going in your favor, all while pestering from mid-range with projectiles to keep your opponent on their toes. This fairly non-committal offense can be fairly rewarding if you know how to position yourself carefully, and if your opponent underestimates just how dangerous you can be, don't be afraid to put your opponent's feet to the fire. Spyro stands as a fairly small quadrupedal character, with his height being just a bit shorter than that of characters like Toon Link and Ness. An iconic platforming mascot introduced into the world in 1998, Spyro is a young purple dragon from the artisan's realm of the dragon world, and while he might not be able to fly, his quick wit and dangerous flame breath have seen him save the day many times over. Be it would-be conquerors, overzealous sorceresses, or Gnasty Gnorcs, nothing's too hard for Spyro, especially when he's accompanied by Sparks, Spyro's best friend and ever-supportive meat shield. While he might be brash and a bit impulsive, it's not hard to understand why he's held in the same high regard as other platforming mascots, especially Crash Bandicoot. As a matter of fact, these two tend to be mentioned together quite a bit, and looking at their history, it's not hard to understand why. From the both of them debuting on the same console, to being owned by the same company, both before and after the Universal merger, and even crossing into each other's universes on multiple occasions, Crash and Spyro are practically inseparable, and fittingly enough, Spyro's design here in Smash is also being built with this unusual pairing in mind. What this means is that Spyro is being designed as an antithesis to the moveset I designed for Crash, which I feel not only highlights the differences between both of their franchises well, but also accentuates both games' strengths and how they can lead into designing either character for a fighting game setting. Crash's level design is fairly linear, as even though there might be a bonus game to find, there's still one clear route to the goal, and you have to do your best to deal with the obstacles on the way there. In turn, Crash is a character who offers the player powerful options and great ways to lead into damage, but his ability to approach is limited, and his neutral presence is fairly stale, meaning his player must carefully read his opponent and look for mistakes if he wants to make a serious push. Spyro, on the other hand, comes from a 3D platforming series with open-ended level design, allowing the player to engage with each level's contents in whatever way they want. As a result, Spyro is a character with a variety of ways he can approach fights and get his offense started, but in turn, his damage output is only average at best, and his range is fairly stubby. This means that, while some obstacles might be difficult to overcome, a steady hand, quick reflexes, and some effective problem-solving skills can lead you to victory, much like they can in a platforming environment. These are the basics of Spyro the Dragon, and in terms of mobility options, Spyro has 3 jumps, all while being able to wall jump. Thanks to the fact that he's still young, Spyro's wings are incapable of full flight, as unless he's assisted by a flight gate, their main use in its home franchise is gliding through the air. This can allow Spyro to reach places he can't normally reach, with this often being required in order to either complete a level or find his game's many hidden collectibles. And as you might have expected, it's this free-flying glide that makes up the basis of Spyro's character mechanic, one which has been fittingly titled Dragon Flight. By holding down the jump button during either his first or second jump, Spyro will be able to glide through the air, with this greatly improving his horizontal recovery and allowing the young dragon to mix up opponents on the approach, as Spyro's glide speed is slightly faster than that of his running speed. As a result, it might be more effective to glide in and cancel into one of your aerials should you wish to push the advantage, which can happen at any time since its cancel window is so large. On top of that, Spyro is also capable of turning around mid-glide, allowing him to disengage from a potential push if its player feels it's too risky, or draw an over-defensive foe out of their comfort zone and into an auto-cancel aerial. However, unlike the other glides that have been in Smash's past, Spyro's glide is locked to a specific angle and cannot be changed, meaning you won't be able to dive in order to either dodge incoming attacks or improve your recovery. This adds an air of predictability to this mechanic, and in turn, forces the Spyro player to be creative with their glide should they wish to use it effectively. Just don't think Spyro is down and out if he gets knocked out of his glide, however, as he is still more than capable of either jumping or using his recovery special. That's all that needs to be said about Spyro's character mechanic. A simple yet versatile approach option that adds a bit of spice to Spyro's more grounded design. And now that you're covered on everything you need to know about Spyro's basics as a character, let's now move on to his normals and discuss a variety of attacks that will follow said simple yet versatile design philosophy. As he is a quadrupedal fighter, many of Spyro's normals are comprised of attacks using a variety of appendages built around his four legs, with these attacks mainly coming from his tail and the horns on his head. Overall, Spyro's range is fairly short, but his attacks can prove difficult to deal with at close range thanks to how fast they are. Spyro's neutral combo is Dragon Tail Combination, a 3-hit combo string that will have Spyro attack in front of himself with a headbutt, all before following up with a pair of horizontal tail strikes that will knock foes away. This string's strongest aspect is the speed of the first hit, with its 2-frame startup allowing Spyro to stuff buttons at close range and make landing from a glide or an aerial fairly safe. But this move's very low range means it won't be working unless your opponent is right on top of you. You do have the potential to use the first hit as bait, as the combo's other 2 hits have more range, but it might be best to just cancel the first hit into another one of Spyro's tilts should you want to maximize your pressure. Spyro's side tilt is Spitfire Spray, a powerful burst damage option that will have Spyro release a wave of fire in front of himself, with this wave covering a solid range and knocking back any opponent in its area of effect. This is Spyro's main form of attack in his home franchise, with this blast of fire providing the young dragon with a solid neutral option and a great advancing tool, as on top of its fully disjointed hitbox, Spyro is capable of using this attack while moving forward, allowing him to keep pressure while on the move and potentially deal with opponents that are trying to keep him out. While this can be great when on the offensive, Spitfire sports no way for the player to tech chase or follow up after landing the attack, meaning this move is at its strongest when used to either reset your opponent back into the neutral or to close out a combo, or maybe even confirm a kill if your opponent's percent is high enough. Just be sure you're careful with your placement, as its status as Spyro's slowest ground attack means you might end up getting stuffed by jabs and faster tilts at close range. Spyro's up tilt is Violet Flip, a simple yet effective tilt option that will have Spyro perform a small jump into the air, all before flipping his body around and striking in an arc with his tail. This strike's quick speed and low knockback growth makes it one of Spyro's most reliable combo starters, and at close range, its cancel window is even fast enough to make it fairly safe against the majority of the cast, but it should be noted that Spyro's short stature makes this move unable to pressure opponents on platforms, meaning the only way he can pressure or challenge platform camping on most stages is to commit to a jump, which has its own set of issues that can lead to a lot of problematic matchups. Spyro's down tilt is Dragon Sweep, another simple yet effective attack that will have Spyro swing his lower body forward, with his tail sweeping along the ground and dealing damage to any opponent in its path. This move sports a couple of unique features when compared to Spyro's other grounded normals, with the major one being the fact that it sports 2 unique hitboxes and launch angles, with the one you get depending on which part of the tail you hit your opponent with. Opponents hit by the length of Spyro's tail will take decent damage and be knocked up and away on hit, allowing Spyro to follow up with various aerials at low to mid percents. But if the opponent is hit by the spike on the end of Spyro's tail, they'll be knocked away horizontally and take slightly more damage in the process. This means that Spyro can use his attack both as a combo starter and as a spacing tool, but do keep in mind that this attack is not disjointed, meaning it can be stopped by pokes and jabs if you aren't careful. Spyro's dash attack is Slipstream Strike, a quick yet stylish attack that will have Spyro perform a rushing leap off the ground, the wind catching below his wings as he soars through the air, launching any opponent in his path away with solid force. With average knockback and average range, this might seem like a fairly standard dash attack at face value, as it can be used to either catch mistakes in the neutral or close out stocks at higher percents. But thanks to the fact that Spyro goes airborne while dashing, he'll be able to continue moving even if he travels past the ledge. This allows Spyro's player to snipe opponents trying to recover or mix up opponents from above, as holding the jump button while attacking will have Spyro immediately transition into Dragon Flight, allowing him to go from a dash attack to a glide to an aerial attack of his choice at the drop of a hat. Just make sure you're not running headfirst into your opponent's shield, however, as it's very unsafe on block. For his get-up attacks, Spyro will attack around himself with either his tail or his horns, all while attacking with a headbutt for his ledge attack. For his smash attacks, Spyro will utilize the enhanced flames of Fairy's Kiss in order to truly pour on the damage, all while manipulating his fire effects in various ways in order to greatly improve their effectiveness and allow the young dragon to secure kills from a safe distance. They're definitely a notable step up from Spyro's other attacks, so if you're in desperate need of a way to close out your efforts, these attacks are the way to go. Spyro's forward smash is Fairy Flare, a fast and powerful attack that will have Spyro release a blast of fairy fire in front of himself, all before using his wings to throw the flames forward and greatly increase their range. This attack's blend of power and speed make it one of Spyro's go-to kill confirms, and while it might look like a projectile attack, it doesn't have projectile properties, so opponents who try to throw your fire back at you with reflectors will just end up getting punished. On top of this attack's flames are also disjointed, allowing Spyro to safely check his opponent's tech options, or plow his way through neutral if his opponent is carelessly throwing out attacks. But just keep in mind that this attack's moderately slow recovery leaves Spyro a sitting duck if this move is blocked at close range, so remember to space yourself properly. Spyro's up smash is Spiral Pyre, another fast and powerful attack that allows Spyro take off into the air, all while releasing a wave of flames from his mouth that will spin around him and damage any opponent that gets too close. This attack will hit multiple times before launching opponents away, with the amount of damage it deals being dependent on what part of the attack they're hit by, as Spyro will drag his opponent upwards before launching them at the end of the move's damage path. While this means that this move's only at its best if your opponent's on the same level as you, its large vertical range means it can snag opponents trying to recover high or camp platforms, and even if it doesn't always result in a kill, it does throw your opponent out of position and force them to readjust on the fly. It might also end up saving your life if it's blocked or whiffed, as the block stun can make this attack safe against characters with shorter range. Finally, Spyro's down smash is Pyro Crush, a slightly slower but still powerful option that will have Spyro leap off the ground, all before diving back down towards the stage with a high-flying headbutt. Spyro will also expel a wave of Fairy's Kiss as he dives, and upon contact with the floor, this flame will spread out along the ground in a wave that will damage anything in its path. This attack will hit on both sides of Spyro simultaneously, and while this move's range isn't on par with either of his other smash attacks, its power, along with the ability to add on extra damage as Spyro hits his opponent head-on, makes it one of Spyro's best tech-chasing options, and one of the first things your opponent needs to keep in mind while they're stuck either off-screen or on the ledge. Just don't let your opponent block it at close range, as you'll just end up getting punished thanks to its slow recovery speed. With 3 jumps under his belt and a small hard-to-hit frame, Spyro can be quite the terrifying combatant if he's allowed to control the air. And as is only fitting with his design, Spyro's aerials will follow the same design philosophy as his grounded normals. With a variety of strikes coming from his horns, his wings, and his tail, Spyro's quick attack speed can make his short hops fantastic and perfectly synergize with Dragon Flight, allowing him to immediately cancel his glide into a slew of fast strikes that can open up defenses or even get combos going. Spyro's neutral air is Violet Circlet, a simple strike that will have Spyro spin around in midair with his tail extended, striking all opponents around him and dealing decent damage in the process. This move sports both a great startup and recovery speed, allowing Spyro to use this both out of a short hop and immediately cancel upon fast falling to maximize his pressure. It's also an attack that can be used multiple times in a single jump cycle, which means it's a fairly safe landing option, should Spyro position himself correctly, but its low knockback growth means its uses are limited outside of neutral exchanges. Even then, it's very useful during the scenarios where it shines, so don't be afraid to throw this button out. Spyro's forward air is Spitfire Spiral, another simple yet versatile attack that will have Spyro perform a mid-air spin, his wings spread out and slicing through the air as he deals rapid damage to anything in his path. This fast attack is one of Spyro's best ways of either closing out an air combo or performing an air-to-ground conversion, as this move's cancel window on the ground is very fast as the player fast falls, which, in turn, makes it one of Spyro's best aerials to use out of his glide. Despite this, however, its short range makes it an attack that you're going to need to commit to should you want to make the most of its benefits, and this puts you at serious risk if your opponent sees it coming. Spyro's up air is Lavender Lasher, a fast juggling option that will have Spyro throw his lower half up into the air in an arc, with this causing his tail to whip upwards and knock any nearby foe up into the air. This simple strike will hit quickly and deal decent damage, and thanks to its quick recovery speed, it's one of Spyro's best juggling tools that can potentially be used multiple times in a single jump cycle. But compared to the up air of Yoshi, this move's lower knockback growth makes it much harder to kill with, but, in turn, much easier to land consecutive hits with. It's also a fairly low committal attack, allowing Spyro to throw this attack out in neutral and be fairly safe while doing so, but just make sure you don't end up trading with any disjoints. Spyro's back air is Orange Buffet, a versatile reversal option that will have Spyro extend his wings out behind himself, causing them to clap together and launch away any opponent caught on their path. This move packs a bit more punch than that of Spyro's other aerials, allowing the young dragon to confirm kills on offstage and deal a bit more damage. And on top of that, it's a disjointed attack that has the potential to win trades, but its overall low range means it still might end up getting stuffed. It also ends up spoiling the least amount of move synergy out of Spyro's aerials, meaning that it's much harder to combo into and next to impossible to use as combo filler, so make sure you only use this when you want to cash out on your damage. Finally, Spyro's down air is Head Bash, a signature attack from the Spyro series that will have the young dragon halt his aerial momentum to perform an aerial spin, and in a flash, he'll then dive downwards towards the ground and not stop until he makes contact with a solid surface, whether it's making contact with the stage or an opponent. This fast-falling attack sports a Meteor Smash effect, allowing Spyro to intercept an opponent trying to recover and secure a kill if they're willing to get a bit reckless. And much like Greninja, Spyro will be bounced up into the air if he makes contact with an opponent. This can lead to some very dangerous games of chicken between Spyro and his opponent, as a successful hit can put yourself in an advantage state at worst and a stock advantage at best. But if you miss, well, you know what happens. As a result, it's an attack that's best used when your opponent least expects it, as the last thing you want is to throw away a lead or dive deeper into a stock deficit. Spyro will grab his opponent by utilizing his Bubble Breath ability from Spyro Enter the Dragonfly, with this having the young dragon expel a wave of bubbles from his mouth that will trap any nearby opponent in a bubble prison, all while using his tail to spin the bubble around for his pummel, causing the caught opponent to roll and tumble inside. For his throws, Spyro will make use of a group of simple yet reliable throw options that are mainly designed for repositioning, as his low overall throw damage isn't going to be confirming kills until very high percents. This, overall, leads to Spyro's grab game being a fairly small part of his game plan, but they can be useful when trying to catch opponents off guard or reset them back into neutral. Spyro's forward throw is Purple Punter, a simple throw that will have Spyro use his wings to take off from the ground, all before using his hind legs to pop the bubble and launch his opponent away. This throw's knockback and strength are fairly average, with its main uses being to throw your opponent off stage or force them back into neutral, which can lead to hasty decision making and potentially open up your opponent for some serious damage. But thanks to Spyro's low range, this could also potentially lead to your opponent regrouping and punishing you if you're hasty, so know when to push and know when it's time to pump the brakes. Spyro's up throw is Horned Catapult, another simple throw option that will have Spyro lift off into the air, all while using his horns to launch his opponent upwards. At low to mid percents, Spyro will be able to use this throw to set up air combos and potentially force tech situations on some platforms, but outside of this set damage window, its uses are limited at best. As a result, it's going to be a tool you forget about midway through your opponent's stock, so use it while it lasts. Spyro's back throw is Violet Lance, a more powerful throw option that will have Spyro leap over his opponents, all before ramming into them at full speed to launch them away. Thanks to its extra power and knockback growth, this is Spyro's best repositioning tool and the closest thing that the young dragon has to a kill throw, with this allowing Spyro to push opponents off stage or force tech chases at low to mid percents. Despite this, however, its kill percent threshold is a bit too high for it to be used reliably, making it far better for forcing opponents back into neutral or getting yourself out of the corner. Finally, Spyro's down air is Spitfire Somersault, yet another simple throw option that will have Spyro leap up into the air, all before coming down on top of his opponent with a somersault drop that will bounce them off the floor. At low to mid percents, the player will be able to use this throw in order to set up combos, and since Spyro's range is fairly poor, it can be one of his safest ways to start building up damage. But on top of his slow grab speed, this combo window will slowly start to deteriorate as your opponent's percent rises, so it's best to not rely on it too much. We've now made it to Spyro's specials. And as is to be expected of a platforming mascot, many of these attacks are designed off of various abilities and power-ups that Spyro can acquire in his home franchise. This collection of attacks is designed to feel well-rounded, with their simple yet versatile designs allowing Spyro's player to mix them into his simple game plan and add just a bit of spice to this dragon's steak. They're simple to understand, yet their potential makes them highly explorative, much like the Spyro series itself. Starting with the neutral combo, Spyro will utilize a projectile attack that, while originally a temporary power-up in his home franchise, has changed into one of his most effective ways of maintaining pressure from a range, or punishing any foe that tries to take advantage of Spyro's stubby attacks. From covering his approach to confirming kills, Super Flame. With this, Spyro will begin to build up flame in his mouth once the B button is pressed, with the flame growing in intensity as the move charges over time. During this charge, the player is capable of either rolling or holding up their shield in order to cancel the animation, and if the player presses the B button again, Spyro will launch out a fireball projectile that will travel straight across the screen. In terms of design, Super Flame will share a lot of the same properties as your average charge projectile, like Samus's Charge Shot or Lucario's Ore Sphere, with the move gaining both more power and speed the longer they're charged for. Despite this, however, Super Flame does sport a couple of unique traits that will separate it from its contemporaries, as once the move reaches full charge, the fireball that Spyro shoots will explode on hit, its hitbox expanding outwards and dealing splash damage to all opponents in its area of effect. This can lead to some chaotic fun in multiplayer matches, or dangerous scrambles and doubles, though I'm sure your Incineroar doubles partner will love the free revenge buff. Just be sure you're careful when you're shooting it, as the last thing you want as a small midweight is a projectile this powerful being thrown back in your direction via a reflector. Also, as an added bonus, this move will allow Spyro to throw out his trademark Flame Breath attack if the player double taps the B button at the beginning of the charge, allowing the young dragon to use one of his best attacks while airborne and add a bit of oomph to his offstage presence. But like Spitfire, it's best to not use it unless you're sure you're going to get something out of it, as its lack of follow-ups make it a combo ender almost exclusively. Moving on to his side special, Spyro will make use of a versatile mobility tool that will allow the young dragon to press the advantage, closing gaps during moments where his opponent is open, and adding a bit of unpredictability to his fairly straightforward design. Head Charge. With this, Spyro will lower his head as he starts to run at high speeds, smashing through anyone in his path for as long as the B button is held. This attack will have Spyro run at a higher speed than he normally does, and much like Wario's bike, the player is capable of changing the direction mid-charge in order to either catch tech options or escape from a potentially hairy situation. Don't think you're safe if you try to avoid from above either, as Spyro is capable of not only jumping during the charge animation, but also carrying his ground momentum forward as he jumps, allowing the young dragon to close gaps more effectively and, more importantly, add movement speed to his glides. This, in turn, allows Spyro to boost his offensive pressure, all while being able to cancel into a shield or a jump while keeping said forward momentum, and if used in the air, he can potentially escape combos, as the move's hitbox becomes active almost immediately. Despite this, however, Head Charge does sport a few weaknesses that will keep its strengths in check, with the most notable one being that this attack will cause Spyro to bounce off of any solid surface he comes into contact with. As a result, this move is very unsafe on shield, as Spyro will be locked into a small animation and be left wide open to some serious punishment. It's also important that you watch yourself while turning around, as your active hitbox will disappear until you start moving in the opposite direction, granting your opponent ample time to catch you with a counterattack. All of this comes together to create an attack that is very rewarding when used effectively, and one of the easiest ways to lose your head if you end up getting caught. But while the weaknesses are definitely going to serve as a beginner's trap, none of Head Charge's weaknesses are something that can't be bypassed by knowing when to drop the charge or cancel into another attack. As a result, this is one of the trickiest attacks that Spyro mains will need to master, but once they do, it can prove to be one of their best neutral tools and a great way to test your opponent's reaction speed. Moving on to his recovery special, Spyro will utilize a common traversal tool in his home franchise in order to take to the skies. And while this is not an ability that Spyro can perform on his own, it's a major part of his series' level design and the ideal way to catch some air beneath your wings. Wind Spiral. With this, a swirling vortex of sparkling wind will appear below Spyro's feet, causing him to rise into the air as any nearby opponent is pushed back from the force of the gust. This move will cover a solid vertical range, and once Spyro reaches the apex of the spiral, he'll immediately enter a glide state, allowing the young dragon to mix his fantastic horizontal recovery potential into his game plan and soar back towards the ledge, even if Wind Spiral is used far off stage. This glide state will act the same as Spyro's standard glide, allowing him to cancel at any point into a variety of attacks and avoid going into freefall altogether. But while this recovery's range is fantastic, it doesn't sport any sort of protection outside the initial wind box. As a result, the player will need to make use of Dragonflight's cancel windows to protect Spyro from harm, but if he gets caught during the initial updraft, there's little you can do to stop your opponent from making you regret your poor positioning. Finally, for his down special, Spyro will take a step away from his usual Spitfire shenanigans and utilize a power-up that's a whole lot cooler, with this unique setup option allowing Spyro to lock down foes and set up a variety of tech chases, all while frame trapping opponents into guaranteed damage. Ice Blast. With this, Spyro will release an icy cold wave of frost from his mouth, with this wave traveling in an arc as Spyro moves his head from low to high. If used on the ground, this will create a rising wall of ice in front of Spyro, with this wall acting as a protective shield that will be able to absorb an incoming physical or projectile attack before crumbling to pieces. And if used in the air, Spyro will instead launch a ball of ice from his mouth towards the ground, with this ball exploding on contact with the closest solid surface and creating a pillar of frost in its place. And that's only if it doesn't hit an opponent first. Should either version of Spyro's ice breath hit the opponent directly, they'll instead be frozen and become immobilized, leaving them wide open to further punishment and making it generally difficult to safely put pressure on the young dragon. As while this can be blocked, the force of the breath will push the opponent out of Spyro's melee range and leave them on the other side of the ice wall, making this move hard to punish on block unless your opponent sports an above average range. All of this creates an attack that will add a lot to Spyro's neutral presence, all while creating scenarios that can push Spyro's opponent into his effective damage range. But what if I were to tell you that there's even more to this move's potential? You see, should an opponent make contact with the ice pillar, it will simply crumble to pieces and disappear a short time later. But should Spyro himself hit the ice pillar, the force will cause the pillar to shatter, creating a wave of icy shards that will travel forward a decent distance and damage any opponent that ends up in its path. These shards will hit up to 3 times, locking the opponent either hit stun or block stun, and, in turn, allow Spyro to respond to his opponent's decisions in various ways. For example, Spyro can follow up the wave of ice with a Super Flame attack, allowing the young dragon to either capitalize on a hit with a powerful launcher, or melt away his opponent's shield to potentially cause it to break. On top of that, Spyro can set up a guaranteed grab if the move is blocked at close range, and if the shards deal enough shield damage, you might also be able to sneak in a shield stab and start a combo that way. Regardless, it's a highly versatile attack that can serve a plethora of options in battle, but just be sure you don't get those shards thrown back at your face via reflector, as all of those setup options work just as well on you. Next is the Final Smash, and for this, Spyro will utilize an ultimate ability from the Legend of Spyro series that will have the young dragon unleash a slew of fire and ferocity upon his opponent, all while adding in a bit of classic flair to fit the design of Spyro that's used for this moveset. Show the world of Smash that you're just as much bite as you are bark. This is Violet Inferno. When the Final Smash starts, Spyro will be becoming cloaked in pink and violet flames, his body coming under the effects of Fairy's Kiss, before flying at high speed across the stage. And should any opponent be caught in the flaming charge, they'll be knocked up into the air and locked into the oncoming damage. At this point, Spyro will take off into the air before circling back around, flying above his caught opponents before unleashing Fire Fury, the waves of fire around his body growing in intensity before bursting apart into a series of fiery comets. Spyro will then launch these comets forward, dealing rapid damage as the comets explode upon impact with the ground, and once all the comets have been expended, Spyro will end the Final Smash by acting as a flaming comet himself, soaring down towards the ground and creating a massive explosion of violet flames. Overall, this Final Smash will hit fast and hit hard, with this being able to change the pace of a multiplayer free-for-all, thanks in part to how many opponents Spyro can catch at a time. And even if he's fighting more than 3 opponents, all additional foes can still be harmed by the splash damage of the flaming comets. Once the explosion subsides, the effects of Fairy's Kiss will fade away as Spyro returns to his idle animation, but not without giving one last taunt to the foes he sent packing. For his victory theme, Spyro will make use of a theme that, while it's technically not a main tune for any of Spyro's games, it is one that's quite well known: Wild Flight. As Stuart Copeland was originally a drummer for the Police before becoming the composer for the Spyro series, I felt a drum-heavy track would definitely be the best choice, and it also helps that Wild Flight is one of the Spyro series' most iconic tracks. Victory animation number 1 will have Spyro fly in from the top of the screen, all before landing and striking a proud pose. This animation is a reference to the title screen of the original Spyro the Dragon game, with the pose Spyro strikes being made to resemble the same pose he strikes on said game's cover art. That's consistent between both the North American and European releases of the main 3 Spyro titles. And with the release of the Reignited Trilogy, it's arguably the most iconic cover art in the entire series. Victory animation number 2 will show Spyro unleashing multiple blasts of flame from his mouth, all before turning to the camera and spinning a wave of fire directly into the lens. After laughing at his antics, Spyro will then strike a pose similar to the main promotional art used for the Reignited Trilogy, and thanks to the success of said collection, it's arguable that this is now one of the most iconic images of Spyro in the modern age. Finally, victory animation number 3 will show Spyro proudly posing for the camera, all before a sheep wanders its way onto the screen and blocks the view. Annoyed at this, Spyro will then send this puffy photobomber flying with a blast of flame, all before returning to his original pose and holding it until the player cycles back to the character select screen. This victory animation is a reference to the ending of Spyro the Dragon, and also a reference to the way that Spyro can defeat fodder enemies in order to recover his health. Though, knowing his history with these fluffy fiends, he more than likely just did that for fun. Taunt number 1 will have Spyro go low to the ground, his hips and tail shaking in an anticipating manner as he lets out a growl towards his opponent. This intimidation tactic doesn't last long, however, as Spyro will turn his attention to the camera and smile, all before he returns to his idle animation. This animation is a reference to one of the various idle animations that Spyro can perform in the Reignited Trilogy, and given Spyro's size and personality, it's not surprising that he tries his best to seem far bigger and tougher than he actually is. Taunt number 2 will have Spyro become irritated as he feels a sneeze coming on, and after a small amount of build-up, the young dragon will release a flaming achoo before returning to his idle animation. This is another one of Spyro's idle animations from his home titles, and should any opponent be too close to Spyro when he sneezes, they'll take small damage and be launched with decent force. Bless you, by the way. Finally, Taunt number 3 will have Spyro turn to the camera and give a cocky smirk, all before giving a small quip toward his opponent. While not referencing anything in particular, it is meant to play up Spyro's brash personality, and a little bit of personality goes a long way to add to a character's charm. For his colors, Spyro will make reference to a blend of both power-ups and a variety of side characters from his home franchise, along with extra Easter eggs that call back to his origins, and the variety of changes he went through during the development of the first Spyro title. Color number 1 is Spyro's standard appearance, with his iconic blend of purple and yellow being based on the same shades seen in the Reignited Trilogy. Color number 2 will have Spyro don the color pattern of his Super Flame power-up, with the yellow in his scales becoming far more vibrant, as his purple scales will become adorned with bright yellow stripes. Color number 3 will have Spyro don the color pattern of his Super Freeze power-up, with this changing his horns, underbelly, and wings to an icy blue, as his purple scales now sport a blue diamond pattern along his back. Normally, this power-up would darken the purple in Spyro's scales, but this only affects his yellow scales here in Smash. Color number 4 will have Spyro don the color pattern of his Plasma Bomb power-up, with this changing Spyro's yellow scales to a vibrant green, as his purple scales become adorned with a pattern of green circles. This is a power-up that Spyro can only use in the battle against Ripto and Ripto's Rage, but the combination of colors was too nice to pass up. Color number 5 will change Spyro's purple scales and eyes to a blazing red, with this referencing the side character Flame from Spyro: A Hero's Tale. While not much is known about him, Flame's design is almost identical to that of Spyro, so the color scheme naturally looks perfect on Spyro himself. Color number 6 will darken the purple in Spyro's scales as his yellow undertones are changed to a vibrant pink. This is a reference to the fan-favorite side character introduced in the Legend of Spyro series, Cinder, and many believe she'd end up being added to the classic series if Spyro 4 were to ever happen. Color number 7 will have Spyro take on the appearance of Dark Spyro, with this changing Spyro's scales to a blend of black and white, while his eyes become a crimson red. While originally introduced in the Skylanders series, Dark Spyro would be snuck into the classic Spyro series through various spin-off appearances, and it's only fitting that Spyro have this color here in Smash as well. Finally, color number 8 will have Spyro's iconic purple scales changed to a muted green, with this referencing the origins of Spyro and the color he was originally planned to be during the development of the first Spyro title. This color can even be used in the actual Spyro titles via cheat codes, so it fits in the Spyro's color kit almost seamlessly. Spyro the Dragon is a franchise that, when compared to a lot of its contemporaries, is in a fairly rough position going into the speculation cycle for the next Smash Bros. While Spyro himself is a fairly popular character, and is more than iconic enough to be included in a celebration of video games like Smash, I would argue that Spyro is one of the least likely third-party characters to appear in the next Smash title. And most of the reasons boil down to one problem that isn't even related to the series itself, and that's the fact that Crash isn't playable yet. I know that might sound odd to some, as how does a completely separate franchise stop Spyro from being included? Well, this mainly comes from the fact that Spyro and Crash have basically become inseparable, and while Spyro's collection has done very well sales-wise, almost every single one of Spyro's appearances in the last 5 years have been directly tied to or associated with Crash in at least some manner. On top of that, Crash is by far the more popular and requested character of the two, and I sincerely doubt that Microsoft would pass up the opportunity to put Crash in Smash over Spyro. Crash also ended up getting more games after his collection released, and with Toys for Bob leaving Microsoft and becoming an indie studio, hopes for Spyro's future in general are fairly bleak. It's a fairly rough situation all around, and even if Microsoft were to get more than one newcomer into Smash this time around, they have characters that are far more iconic to video gaming as a whole than Spyro, like Doomslayer and Master Chief. Thanks to all of this, I have very little hope for Spyro getting into Smash in a playable fashion, as I personally feel the most he has a shot at right now is a Roles and Assists trophy. I won't entirely rule out the possibility of him being DLC, but he has a lot of hurdles to pass if he wants to get that shot. Knowing this hurts, as Spyro has been a popular request for Smash since even the days of Brawl. But at this point, the most I'm hoping for is that we eventually get that coveted Spyro 4, and that Spyro himself doesn't fall back into obscurity. Whatever happens, I will still support Spyro getting into more crossovers, and wish his series the best going forward. But for now, it just wasn't meant to be. If you like what you saw, be sure to like and comment. It not only helps with the algorithm, but also gives me a much needed boost in morale. If you want to see more, be sure to subscribe. And if you want to jump right into the other movesets that I've made, follow the link in the description to go to my Challenger Concept playlist. If you want to keep up to date on the stuff that I'm working on, or simply want to get more involved with the community, you can follow me on Twitter, or click the link in the description to join my Discord. Just be sure you press that little bell icon, as doing so will leave you assured that you'll never miss a future upload. For now, I've been Felicia Fan, and I hope that you have a good one.